lot of people don't like that phrase, and I understand, but pain is a privilege. I had a life-altering hiking accident when I was 19, so I was really facing a life of permanent paralysis. It's the philosophical problem of evil that people have contended with for centuries. If God is good, why does he let bad things happen to good people? There's different dimensions to who we are rather than just a body. And I think what the pain does is it opens the door to that dimension. It's tragic for those who don't, because then you're just a suffering body. I fell off a 35-foot cliff when I was on my mission, broken my back in half, broken my left leg, punctured my lungs. I got to the hospital and my parents showed up and the doctor told them that I would never walk again. My eternal existence and perspective of everything shifted right then and there in that moment. The adversary really liked to take advantage of that. How could he let something like this happen to you? You're a good person. I'm 19, prime of my life. I don't know if this is better to be alive or dead at this point.
There will be pain. We will make mistakes. What does it look like when there's no pain?
Pain is not the problem. It's what we do or don't do with that pain.
Let's say you go back to that day. You have the injury. Get up and walk away. Would you do it?
Once I got through the shock and I kind of collected my awareness of what was happening, which to some extent, I still didn't even know what was happening to me, really. All I knew is that I couldn't feel anything from my mid-chest level down. And in that moment, I was praying to God to let me live. I was afraid that I would never see my family again, my mother, my father, my siblings, friends back home. And so in that moment, I was making peace with God to die. And what was interesting enough was as I got initially through that panic that I could die right here, then there was a wave of peace that came over me. And in a lot of ways, it was because I think it had something to do with me serving my mission and dying on my mission potentially. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, that is like VIP access to the celestial lounge. Like I'm gonna die. I'm gonna show up. I'm a good missionary. I'm trying to do my best, and they're gonna just open that velvet rope and let me in. And it's humorous, but it was something that actually gave me a lot of peace and comfort. Is knowing that I'll be taken care of. I'll be okay. But it happened after the initial almost freak out or panic of potentially never seeing my family again.
So what are you thinking? I mean, are you praying to God or are you just thinking these thoughts? What is it? How is it?
I think it was more, I was just thinking these, it was just more really intense survival-based thinking. I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm going to die, that kind of thing. And
this is it.
Imagine like a war scene, like in some war movie where a young soldier's on a beach crying out for his mom. That's more of what it was like, just fear. But then as I kept breathing and as I stayed alive, then my mind started to kind of come back online. So, initially that fear was coming from the back of my brain, where the lizard brain is, the survival mechanism. And once I started to breathe through and kind of just settle into the pain of what's going on and realizing that I'm still alive and I'm still here, then more higher level kind of thinking came online, and I started to try to initially negotiate with God. I was negotiating with him.
And negotiating what?
Let me live. Please let me live. I want to see my family again. I want to get married. I want to have kids. But then there was a strange peace that came over me when I just let go and gave into the pain and gave into what could happen, to let go of that control.
You accepted it.
I accepted the pain.
You accepted the fact that you could die, or you accepted the pain? Tell me
both. I accepted the pain of what I was going through right then and there, and I accepted the fact that I could potentially pass away.
So you were open.
I was open to it. And in a lot of ways, I didn't realize what I was doing in that moment, but essentially I was trying to just give my will. I surrendered my will. There's only so much fighting you can do. You want to try to hold on, and I want to live. But then it's not that necessarily I gave up. It's just that I gave up trying to have control over everything and just let it happen.
So so this is when you're laying down. From what I understand, like you're waiting for them to come back. This is in a country in Mexico. The medical treatment isn't probably the same level.
Yeah, let's just say there's no medevac helicopter coming to get me.
So you're laying there for 3 hours.
Yeah, so I was when I fell off a 35-foot cliff when I was hiking with some of the other missionaries when I was on my mission. And when I had fallen, I had broken my back in half. I had broken a few ribs, broken my left leg, punctured my lung. So I'm all kinds of messed up on the side of this mountainside. And I'm in Mexico. I'm in the mountains of Mexico. It's very much like here in Utah. And yeah, there was nothing around. And so I was on the hill for a few hours. Now, I was surrounded by other guys I was with. So half the guys went to go get help, and then the other half stayed with me until those other guys returned. And they returned with a few paramedics and a stretcher. And that's, they hiked up, came in, put me on the stretcher and hiked me down.
So they come back. You're realizing like, okay, maybe this isn't over. I'm going to live. Maybe I can live. What are some of the thoughts that you have that give you the strength to hold on? And what was that pain like then?
That pain, the pain I was going through was all consuming. And so it's hard to think back to, once again, any kind of, it's interesting when I was when I was on the hill, I had fallen and then rolled down the hill 50 yards or so. And then I was just kind of immobile. Right. So then my body, my mind adjust, like as long as I wasn't moving, I'm like, okay, I can kind of adjust and adapt to the pain I'm feeling right now. But when you have a body that's broken in half and broken ribs, I mean, anyone that's had just a bruised rib knows that a sneeze or a laugh is going to, take you out. I have, I think, 2 or 3 broken ribs on the backside where they kind of connect around to the back. And because my spinal cord was damaged, I couldn't feel anything below, but the ribs were above that injury site, so I could still feel the ribs. So as you're being jostled down a hillside on a stretcher with broken ribs,
you feel every piece of
you're gonna feel every step of those people carrying you down. So that pain, it's almost like it wasn't allowing me to settle into what it was, just constantly moving, like fresh pain, boom, boom, every step. So that pain was really taking over my mind, and I'm just pleading with God to make it go away or to have it stop in my mind. But I wasn't saying necessarily anything out loud. I was just trying to just power through. Yeah. Just power through and be tough, and to hope that at some point this is going to be done. And I can either recover from this or die. But I think at some point it was so bad, I was hoping for just any kind of alleviation of the pain, or what's the word I'm looking for? Any kind of just any way, whether it's by death or medicine or
relief,
whatever. Yeah. I just want
to escape it.
Yeah. I just want to go.
So you fall and you're like, this is it. And then you're like, oh, maybe it's not it. And then now that you are staying alive, you're like, dang, I don't know if I really wanted this.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people that, so a lot of people that have experienced that. And I experienced it that day, where you start to question, like, I don't know if this is better to be alive or dead at this point. This is so bad. It's so intense.
Now I know that we're kind of saying it's like, hey, but for real though.
No, yeah.
I think that there's some people experience, but see, I think there's people in life that maybe they haven't been. So at this point, you're paralyzed.
Yes.
Paralyzed. You can't feel your legs, and you know that this is serious.
Yeah.
You get to the hospital, they let you know. How did that go down?
So when I got to the hospital, they had to drive me a few hours south to the nearest biggest hospital. And at that point as well, they had let my parents know back in the States of what's going on. My parents were en route, and when they were traveling, they had to make the decision. They were on the phone with doctors and people all over the country to, what are we going to do with this kid, right? And are we going to do surgery on him in Mexico, or are we going to try to life flight him up to the States? And they decided that it was better to do surgery on me in Mexico to stabilize the injury site before transporting me. So by the time I got to the hospital, it had been a few hours, and they had not given me any pain medication because they wanted me to stay awake, right? They didn't want to give me pain medication to then eventually or potentially slip into a coma. We don't want that to happen. So when I finally got to the hospital, then they started, okay, he's stable enough. We kind of know what's going on. He is still in critical condition, But
so you still could have died at this point.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're still trying to figure out exactly what's happening. But at that point, they had kind of realized, okay, you know, we're going to have to give him pain medication to like get through this surgery. So that's when things got really hazy for me in my mind. I don't quite remember everything. I remember glimpses, brief moments of waking up in between surgeries or whatever it may be, or seeing my parents for the first time. But essentially, when my parents showed up, they were coming in at the tail end of my surgery in Mexico, major spinal cord back surgery in Mexico. And the doctor had told him that I would never walk again. And with his broken English, you know, he couldn't really, it's hard because the other missionaries that are trying to translate, they don't know technical medical Spanish. They just know everyday Spanish. And so the doctor kind of gets flustered, this according to my parents, and then he points at my parents and he says, "Your son, is that your son?" They go, "Yeah." And he does this motion with his fingers to simulate walking and then just does this. And meaning he's done. He's never going to walk again. So the prognosis wasn't good. So essentially what had happened is my spinal column, the major bone that protects your spinal cord, just shattered and exploded and was putting a lot of pressure on my spinal cord. And it was at the thoracic 8 level, which is right in the middle, mid-chest, just on the backside. And that column, all that bone had exploded and was putting pressure on my spinal cord. So it was clamping. It was almost like creating a clamp, a seal. So any message from my brain going down would hit that blockage. And it's like, no, it's not going to go any further. And now luckily my spinal cord wasn't completely severed. It wasn't cut or anything like that. It was just being pinched. So what they did in Mexico is they went in and they got all those pieces of bone off of my cord in the hopes that eventually it will just come back online. We'll see. But at that point, I couldn't move anything. I couldn't feel anything from mid-chest down.
So you know that, like, did you believe him that you were never going to walk again? Or what do you, like, to hear that as a 19-year-old, what is that like? Like the moment that did you remember him saying?
No, I wasn't there for that. I was knocked out.
So what was it like when you found out?
So when I found out, the best way I can describe it, initially it's shock. It's hard to let news like that sink in. Because I'm 19, I'm 19, prime of my life, you know, and especially living in a foreign country at that point, I'd really picked up the language well, and I was, you know, I'm like, oh, I'm feeling really comfortable here, you know, just on the adventure of a lifetime. And all of a sudden, within a moment, the best way I can describe it is, it's not that my life had changed, but my eternal existence and perspective of everything shifted right then and there in that moment. And once I got through the initial shock, and then kind of let it sink in.
Who told you? What?
I vaguely remember it was a doctor that had come in and kind of updated me on what was going on. But then I remember a really powerful experience was my mother. I remember seeing my mother. I don't know if it was the first time, but it was definitely during when I was in the hospital in Mexico. And I remember seeing my mother, and I remember crying to her and pleading with her, I just want to walk again. I just want to walk again. I just want to walk again. And she said, honey, you're going to walk again. It's just going to take a really long time. And I mean, there's some serious stones to say something like that to a kid who just broke his back. Like you got courage to say something like that. But I see my mother and my father as huge examples of faith. And I think that was my mom speaking, or the Spirit speaking through my mother to telling her to tell me, hey, tell him that he's going to walk again. It's just going to take a really long time. And man, I cling on to that with everything I had, especially in those darker moments when I didn't know if that would be the case. So once the shock wore off, and it would come in waves, there'd be times where I wouldn't be thinking about it as much, but then it would hit me really hard, especially when I'd look down at my legs in bed and I couldn't move anything. It'd be like you trying to move, you know, a water bottle or, you know, your books or whatever with your eyes. That's what it felt like to look down at my legs, and I'm like, I can't move anything now.
There's nothing. It's like
whereas before you wouldn't even think about it. You know, you don't think, okay, move left leg, move right leg. You know, you don't think about these things.
You're just like,
and I'm looking at it and nothing is responding. And those moments were really tough. And I would say that you asked me what it was like. It, as strange enough as this is to say, as much as I have a testimony of the existence of God and Christ, I have a testimony of the existence of Satan, the adversary.
The existence of Satan.
He and I have had some interesting moments at night together. When that darkness falls, that's when the adversary really loves to work on you.
Whoa. Tell me about this. What do you mean?
I just, when you're awake, when you're surrounded by people, when it's light out, your mind is occupied. And in those early days of my accident, I would have a lot of encouragement. I would have a lot of prayers, a lot of good wishes, and people updating me like, we're praying for you from, a lot of some of my best friends. I still talk to them every day from growing up in the same ward in California. They were all out serving missions in Thailand, Venezuela, Brazil, Panama. And, they're all fasting for me. They're all praying for me. So you have this flooding of support. Yeah. And all the relationships I made in Mexico, they're all coming to visit me. And then at night, everyone's got to, and I understand this, but everyone's got to go home. And then I'm alone. And when you're alone, you're very vulnerable, right? It's kind of like a law of nature, law of reality. When you're alone, you're vulnerable. And man, that's when the adversary really liked to take advantage of that, of my loneliness and my vulnerability.
What would he tell you?
Give up. I think that was the essential gist of it.
Give up.
Like, you're never going to be happy. I think one of the things too is that he would like to sow seeds of anger between me and God. And I think anger towards God can actually be a natural thing. A lot of people experience that. But I think the adversary, what he would do is he would really try to water those seeds, if that makes sense.
What were some of the beliefs?
How could he let something like this happen to you? You're a good person, right? Essentially,
you're on your mission.
Yeah, it's the philosophical problem of evil that people have contended with for centuries.
Why would he let this if he's
God? If God is good, why does he let bad things happen to good people?
And so you're thinking, I'm a good guy.
I'm a good guy.
It's just all ruined.
Yeah, like I'm not a bad missionary. I'm trying to do his good work. I've made mistakes, but I have a good heart and good intentions. I'm really trying here. How could you let this happen to me? And Satan would almost like plant the seed. How I conceptualized it is he would give that thought, or I would have that thought because I'm just curious, right? Like, what is going on? I'm trying to make sense of what's understanding, trying to make sense of what's happening to me, trying to understand. And I just felt like that darkness and that anger he would water that, and then he would kind of step back and go, all right, I'll just let that do its thing. I'll let that darkness kind of work its way through Ron and see what comes out of it. So it's, as much as I have a testimony of Christ, if we have a testimony of Christ and we believe that he lived, then we believe that he was also tempted in the desert by the devil. And I definitely have had my desert moments with the devil, if I could say that.
What was the temptation that he gave you?
The temptation was to turn away from God. The temptation was to let anger take over, to let bitterness work through me and to take control of me. I think another temptation was, once again, to give up and in some ways, in a deeper way, give up my sense of identity and divinity. If like that connection, God doesn't care about you if you let this happen to you. And so the temptation was to essentially lose who I am, which is a son of God, but to lose that. So then I fall prey to, I think, eventually the world, and that I end up worshiping something else besides Christ.
So the temptation is to give up. If you're really in that dark moment, like we're in the hospital room, you're sitting there at night, everybody leaves. What are some of the thoughts that come to your mind? What are some of the images that are coming to your mind of what giving up would be to you?
Here's one way to, I think, conceptualize it. Giving up would be removing God from the highest spot of a value hierarchy, of a value pyramid. So we value things in our lives. And we have the psychological wiring to worship. So it's not a matter of if we worship, it's it's what we will worship. We will all worship something. And I think the giving up is, I'm going to give up that top spot. I'm going to remove God from that top spot and Christ from that top spot. And I'm going to worship something else. I'm going to worship anger. I'm going to worship materialism. I'm going to worship hedonism, pleasure. I'm going to worship the avoidance of pain. I'm going to do anything I can to numb this out, right? So I think
to avoid it.
Yeah, the giving up would be, I'm not going to have God in that spot anymore. I'm going to give it up to something else. And I'm going to worship something that would take God's place.
That's deep, man. I'm just trying to imagine you in that room. You know what I mean? Like, what makes it so tempting to give that up? You know what I'm saying? Because it sounds like it was very, because the way you said, you're like, yeah, I've got a witness of God and of the adversary. Mm-hmm. What is that? What was that like? Is what I'm trying to get at.
It was.
Can I just be real with you?
Yeah.
I don't see. Maybe you're not saying this, but I'm like, because you mentioned this before. Like, did you ever consider like, I'm not going to walk again. Let me just end this thing.
Oh, absolutely.
And
yeah,
I don't.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, when you're faced with something like that, when your life in the present, but also your future life has shifted so dramatically, and not necessarily, at least initially, it doesn't seem like it's going to shift in a way that you want, right? I wouldn't say that I ever wanted to have a spinal cord injury, but when your life shifts that dramatically, you can't help but think about the worth of your life. What is my future going to be like? And
what do you think?
Is it worth living? I mean, that's the ultimate question.
What are the things that because it sounds like there's things that won't happen what are some of those things?
My number one worry was, will I ever be able to have children? Can I have children? And will there ever be a woman that would love me? You know, so much of a male's psyche, like so much of a male's psyche and their perception and conceptualization of worth, their own worth, is based on performance and ability. And right or wrong, that's just what it is. And one of my major thoughts, one of the themes that I was working through for not just that initially after the accident, but for years afterwards, was what woman is going to love half of a man? You know, I saw myself, because my body was literally broken in half. So now I'm half of a man. What woman is going to want half of a man? No woman's going to want half of a man. So is life even worth living, right? And then you can see how those kinds of thoughts start to creep in. But it's based on faulty logic, right? It's based on a massive assumption that one, I'm somehow half of a man now.
Yeah, seriously.
I'm still a man.
Yeah.
But
these are some of the things
he's based on this conclusion, right? They're like, half a man. And then you have these strange, this is going to sound interesting, but you have these voices. Everyone experiences this feeling, this phenomenon. It's just a message, a voice will come out of nowhere in our mind, for good or for bad.
What were some of the messages?
But it's like stuff like that. It's like, well, what woman's going to love half of a man? You might as well give up. You might as well kill yourself. And then you have a part of your mind, or if you were to look at it through a religious lens, the adversary saying, yeah, why don't you do that? That sounds like a good idea. Like, yeah, you're right. What woman is going to want you? No one. And it's almost like, wait, is that me saying that? Like, that's not me. That seems like that feels like something else telling me that. So it's thoughts like that where you start to question the worth of life. And Camus talks about this. Shakespeare talks about this. To be or not to be, that is the question, right? Camus, French philosopher, talks about that being the ultimate philosophical question: is life worth living? And so you asked me, what is that like? Not just initially after the accident, but for years after the accident. I'm wrestling with these kinds of ideas in my mind. You'd have these, let's call them flare-ups, right? You have these moments where you're like, yeah, actually a lot of this would be easier if I just kind of made an early exit. But then you'd have moments of beauty and meaning and love that helps to counterbalance that, counteract it, that then makes it worth fighting for, makes life worth living.
Wow. So you went through it, man. That's what it sounds like to me. I mean, but I think that many people have not been paralyzed, right? Maybe they didn't experience this, I would call it being stuck, right? What would you say would be different to, I guess, what did it teach you, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at. Because there's other people that I think might be watching this that they've never been physically stuck. Maybe they're spiritually stuck.
Yes.
What did it teach you about that from a spiritual sense?
I think what it taught me is that pain can be beautifully transformative if you allow it to. If you accept, as we were talking about before, if you accept the pain and not necessarily, and what it means to accept is you don't have to like it, but you just look at it for what it is. It's pain. A couple of the bigger misconceptions, misunderstandings about pain is that it's bad and it needs to be avoided, and there's nothing good in this pain for me. Whereas if you were to look at it from just purely, even just a evolutionary, biological, physiological level, from that, through that lens, if you place your hand on a hot stove, you feel pain. The pain then forces you to move the hand. Now, you still felt the pain, but if you don't feel the pain and you just keep your hand on that stove, you're going to have really bad problems in the future. Like, it's going to get really serious. So pain is helpful. Pain is a teacher. And I think if people could see pain as a teacher and to start asking questions rather than, how do I avoid this? Look, and there are times, like if I have a headache, I will take Advil. Okay, I'm not going to sit there and go, oh, what is God?
But it lets you know that you need it. It lets you know.
But in his hand, like there's something going on. I need to drink more water.
Yeah.
I need to rest, something, right? But the pain is trying to teach us something. And if you have these kind of deeper, either internal pains, existential pains, but even external circumstances, things that have been done unto you, and yet you're still wrestling with what's happened, man, if you start asking the right questions, that could lead to different perspectives. Like, why does this still bother me? What could this pain be trying to teach me right now? What could God be trying to teach me through this pain? What changes in my life could I make that the pain is trying to kind of get me to be aware of? You just never know. You know, there's so many embedded, hidden answers in the pain if we can just sit and hold that tension long enough to ask the question. Like, so much in psychology and in therapy, I'll explain to people that therapy, one, is just learning how to suffer better. That's what therapy is. Now, how do we suffer better? How do we deal with pain better? One of the keys to therapy is, can you sit and hold that tension long enough until and while asking the right questions, and then an answer can be revealed. But if we just try to get rid of the tension and the pain in our lives, oh man, you may have just missed out on an opportunity to learn something really vital to either help you grow in the moment, or like the hand on the oven, help prevent more severe suffering that's coming down the road if you don't change something now.
So it sounds like we need to reframe what pain is.
Yes, it's a fundamental reframing of what pain is. It's a messenger. It's something that privileges us. Pain is a privilege. That's the reframe. And a lot of people don't like that phrase. And I understand. I know that there may be someone listening. I know the first time I'd kind of come to it, I'm like, there's no way. But it does. What's the choice? Your choice is pain is just something that I have to suffer through, or I can choose to view pain as a privilege. What is it privileging me with? The opportunity to understand something. Maybe it's warning me about something. Maybe I can grow. Maybe it's teaching me to be more grateful, right? Maybe it's through this, I'm going to get stronger, and my future self will thank me for whatever I choose to do now. It's like when we go to the gym, that pain is a sign that while muscle tissue damage is happening, there's also growth on the other end of that. And so that's when guys, women in the gym, they chase that pain. It's weird. Like the gym is a great example. People are walking in chasing pain.
I know, it's so painful.
It's like
have you never seen anybody?
What's so funny is that you think of like pioneers, pilgrims, they'd be like looking at you, be like, okay, let me get this straight.
Yeah.
You walk into a building, heated or air conditioned, depending on the season, and you just move heavy objects around.
Yeah, well, they used to actually do it.
Yeah, it's like, well, we had to,
but that's why we
take the stumps out of a field, for 7 hours, 8 hours on multiple days. Like, you guys are willingly chasing your pain. It's like, yeah, because if we don't, then it's not good for us. If we don't seek out tension, or if we don't figure out how to hold tension, just like you're holding a weight and then dropping it slowly and safely, then we become unhealthy. Charlotte Bruler Charlotte Bueller. She's a female psychologist from the 60s. She said that the health of every organism is dependent on the organism's ability to hold tension and then let go of tension, and do that over and over and over again throughout its life. If you can hold that tension and then let it go, then you will be a healthier individual. That goes with physical pain. It goes with mental. It goes with psychological as you're trying to work through something. So pain, it's a fundamental reframe and reconceptualization of what pain is. So many times people they won't believe that they could handle anything as bad as I've gone through. But there are plenty of people that I look at them and go, I could never deal with that.
Whoa. Tell me about that.
What I mean is, a lot of people will assume that they can't take it. They can't take the pain that either the world has in store for them or that God allows to happen to them. But what I think pain can do is it can really show you what you're made of. And you're made of a lot more than what you think you are. You are an extremely powerful, multidimensional being, mind, body, and soul, that when those three elements are in unison and they're doing their jobs and they're working together, there is arguably nothing that you can't overcome, that you can handle it. And if there's one thing that I want, anyone listening, or even some of my clients, or one thing that I've learned, right, is that if you can accept the pain and have the right perspective and believe that you can handle it, you will prove to yourself that you are made of a lot more than what you think you are. You can take a lot more than what you think you can. And what a beautiful process. Brutal, but beautiful. So much so to the point where when I look back on what I've gone through, and a lot of people will, I think, if they've been through something really brutal and they've seen how it can transform and how it can help and how it can actually in some ways bring you closer to God, then what you've gone through, your pain, becomes something very sacred to you. And there's plenty of philosophers that talk about this, and Stoics, where they look back on things and they go, you can look back on it and it would become something sweet to remember, which seems to be paradoxical. It's like, wait, pain will become something sweet to remember? It's like, well, yeah, it depends on the view you're taking of it. If you see it as something that has taught you, that has led you to a certain place in life, it will become something sweet to remember.
So the perspective matters a lot.
Oh my God, it's everything.
When it comes to any pain.
It's everything. Perspective is everything.
The perspective of the pain, I'm even noticing, if I look back from what you said, even from the physical side of it, you could look at it as, I'm half of a man. You could look at it as, like, how does that work? What would that look like to have that perspective change?
I think for me, a massive turning point was when I realized that what the pain was giving me was an opportunity to connect with my Savior. It was giving me an opportunity to get just a little bit of a taste of what he went through in the garden for me. And there's something really empowering about that. There's something that then opens up other avenues of exploration and understanding of what pain allows us to do. And you can look at it as this is one of my favorite quotes is from Nietzsche. He's an interesting guy, German philosopher. And I don't agree with a lot of what Nietzsche says, but I have some fun wrestling with him, in his books. But he says that there will always be rocks along the pathway. It's just like kind of paraphrasing his quote. But in the pathway of life, there's always going to be rocks. Now, whether they are stumbling blocks or stepping stones, that's all up to us. It's up to our perspective. There's always going to be these stones in the pathway, but whether they're stumbling blocks or stepping stones to something better or bigger, that's up to us.
So there's always going to be, that's so true, man. I really believe that. I really believe that what you're saying is so, even in the natural world, right? There's like, you can look at anything multiple ways, but what is it really? What is it really,
Yeah.
And I think that this might even be good to consider, like, what are the assumptions that people have about pain that you learned as you experienced this? What were some of the, because I think it could be in a way of saying, before you even had the experience, what did you think it was going to be like? And then obviously it changed.
Oh, it changed.
And then now, how do you see it differently?
Yeah,
right?
no, that's a good question.
Do you know what I mean? Like, before what was your life? You're imagining your life. Okay. Before you even served the mission, you're like, okay, life's going to be like this. And you've already mentioned some of these things. And then it was complete. Like, this happens to so many of us, right? It's not that.
No, it's not.
And then you took those and you turned them into stepping stones.
Yeah.
But before, what did they look like?
Before my life, or before the accident, yeah, my life was, I don't know, it was largely unmapped. I didn't necessarily have I wasn't necessarily aimless, but I knew that, oh, it's okay. Just a lot of assumptions. I'm probably going to go to college, or maybe I'll be a pilot like my dad, or I'll probably get married and have some kids, and life will be great. That was pretty much it, you know. I might go through something hard here and there, but no big deal, because I largely had a great, amazing childhood. And so to have the entire board, the metaphorical, the proverbial game board of life, just completely flipped upside down, it's like the pieces just went everywhere, and I didn't know what to do with that. So that's kind of what I was then facing, is how do I reorganize, just even reorient myself to even where I'm at now, and then where am I going to go with this? And in a lot of ways, man, in that moment, you're just living day to day. Like, there are times where I'm like, I can't think ahead. I can only think to the next half hour. Right? I can only think to the next hour. I can't wait for this pain, or this, I was on a lot of different medications. I had nerve pain, and I was on blood thinners, and I was on like so many different medications, because it wasn't just the surgery in Mexico. When they flew me back up to the States, I had another additional almost 20 hours of surgery to repair my leg and to further repair my back. So you're on a lot of painkillers, pain pills, because of that, just to survive, just to live through the day. And so there are times where I'd have deeper reflective moments of where my life is going to go. But then that can get overwhelming, because there's so much uncertainty. And when you're facing that much uncertainty, it gets really scary. It's very threatening. We don't like uncertainty. As human beings, our minds are wired to instinctively avoid that. We want certainty. We want control, because uncertainty is danger. There's potential harm there. There's death there. So when you're facing that much uncertainty, you can either get lost in the abyss, in that darkness, or you can maybe kind of, all right, fall back. It's like a general, like, all right, fall back, too much. And so you have to fall back and just kind of live moment to moment. So a lot of those times I was living just moment to moment, just to stay alive.
What became uncertain to you? What was that?
Oh, well, going back to, am I going to ever get married? Will a woman ever love me? Those kind of general themes, as well as, I don't even know what I'm going to do for a career. How am I going to make money? How am I going to enjoy life? Because so much, I think people take for granted how much of their sense of identity is tied to their physical mobility.
I never thought of that.
Right?
It really is true.
It is. So you talk about uncertainty, is who am I at this point? Who will I become? I don't even know who I am anymore.
I almost as if that's so interesting that and I think that it reveals that maybe we do this and we don't even realize that our identity is so tied into our body.
Yeah, it can be, for sure. And
in
so
so
when
many
that's
ways.
Yes. And so, and for better or for worse, there are things that are like, I was an athlete in high school, and for fun, me and my friends, we would go wakeboarding. We would, we'd play pickup basketball games. I played football in high school, golf, in high school. And so then my friends and I would go golfing together. So I was very physically active. And that just kind of becomes, without you even knowing it, just becomes who you are, or part of you at least. And when that's taken from you, it's kind of like you're sitting on a stool with certain legs, and these legs, the stool is your identity, and the legs are the components of your identity. And I just had a few legs of that stool ripped off, and now I'm tumbling. I don't even know who I am anymore. And those are some pretty big legs of that stool. Think about how much we orient ourselves to the world and our surroundings through our physical mobility and our means. And when that's taken from you, you're now faced with a whole new game. You don't even know who you are anymore. And so uncertainty, facing that, was daunting, to say the least. And over time, I was able to face it a little bit more and more, and I would do a lot of journal writing, just trying to figure things out, just writing about what I'm going through in the moment. And sometimes I didn't figure anything out. I just needed to write down whatever was going on, and then questions I had, and then I'd come back to it. And you're just trying to just reorient and put the pieces back on the game board to some extent to where you found them before. It's not always going to be the same. It won't be. But that's, I think, what I was trying to do in that moment, that stage of my life.
So it is flipped upside down. You thought it was going to be one way. It's not that way.
Yeah.
What would you say for you? You've talked about a couple of things already. We kind of talked about them generally. What were some of the darkest moments for you in that time when after it was flipped upside down?
Well, I think one of them, simultaneously one of the most darkest, but one of the most special moments I ever had was what I call as my own garden moment. So in the garden, Christ, he is the Son of God. He's the only begotten. He is the Father's primary representative amongst us. And even he, the Son of God, was saying, I don't want to do this. Can I do this? I don't want to do this. I really don't want to do this. Please don't make me do this. And I had a lot of those same kinds of thoughts. Like, I don't know if I can handle this. Please don't make me do this. And there was one pivotal evening. I can't remember the date, but I remember it was towards the tail end of my hospital stay where I had to give in and give up. And what I gave up to the Lord, to God, was my will. And what I had asked for was the ability to make a good life. What I had to give up was I was clinging so hard to the hope and the outcome that I'd walk again. But I still didn't know if that was actually going to happen. And so what I had to do is I had to almost give up a certain prayer I was having. Instead of praying to walk again, I had to give that up, and I had to change my prayer.
Oh, whoa, wow.
And I had to change my prayer towards whether I walk again or not, I need your help to have me, to help me have a good life.
Do you remember that day?
I do. I remember that night. Yeah.
That night? So before it'd be, please help me walk again.
Yeah. I just want to walk in. Please help me walk again.
My mom said it. My mom said it. And then what? Explain it. Just help me feel.
And it's not to say, it's once again, it's not, I mean, obviously I'm walking now. I walk with a cane. And so it worked out great for me, but there's a lot of people that it doesn't work out for like that. A lot of people who have spinal cord injuries that it does not work out for. And as much faith as I had that it would work out, you still can't help but feel a little bit of doubt. You can't have faith without, because the faith is different than knowing. Faith is different than knowledge. Right. And so faith presupposes a little bit of doubt. Like you can't have one without the other. And so one of my favorite scripture stories is the father in the Gospel of Mark bringing his child to the feet of Christ and saying, help my child, heal him.
Help mine.
Yeah. And he says, well, do you believe I can? Yeah. And he says, yea, Lord, I believe. Help thou mine unbelief. And I'm sorry.
It's okay.
That was my prayer, is I believed that the Lord could help me walk again, but I had to be okay with maybe it not happening. And I had to face that. I had to face the doubt. I had to face the potential that it wouldn't happen. And so I prayed for the courage and the ability to do that because I didn't know what would happen, but I also had to change what I was having faith in. I had to give up praying for and having faith in that I would walk again. And I had to turn and start having faith that I would have a good life regardless if I would walk again or not. That's when it shifted for me.
Wow.
Because I had to change what I was having faith in.
Because even if you did, it would still be
powerful. Absolutely. Because even
if you did,
that's
or
the
didn't,
thing. Like
you're accepting it.
Huh? Yes, because I could have gotten. The faith. Lord could have. I believe this. Lord could have healed me right then and there. That doesn't mean I'll have a good life.
But it makes me realize. Like it makes me think of the question. Like, but then what is really the real healing?
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand?
Exactly. Right. And that's why when Christ heals the man who is lowered through the roof with his friends, right? He says, your sins are forgiven. That's the first thing he says. Now you're healed. Now you can get up and walk. It's like, oh, wait, what? Oh, I thought I was here to just get up and walk. It's like, no. There's a deeper spiritual healing. So I had to move my faith. I still wanted to hold on to the faith. I just had that I would walk again. I just kind of had to put it to the side over here. And I had to change what I was praying for and having faith in, which is that regardless if I walked or not, I could have a deep, meaningful, and beautiful life. And that's what I had to have faith in.
Ooh.
And then I had to ask him, I believe, now it goes back to the Father and Mark, I believe that can happen, but I need your help. I need your help to help me have a good life. And so by giving up and shifting my faith towards something else, something deeper, that was almost a way detached from certain external circumstances, being, am I going to walk again or not? I had to remove wanting and having a beautiful life. I had to remove that. I had to detach those things. And I had to just give that all to God, and just hopefully that I could find a way, and to pray for the power to have a good life, to pray for the faith, the power, the endurance, regardless if I walked again or not.
His desire was way bigger than just you walking.
Exactly. Yes.
I mean,
yes.
it makes me think of
tapping into that. Yeah, it's powerful.
It's like Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane.
Yes.
Father, if there be any other way, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine will be done. And so the question is, like, what is it that God really wanted for you? Like with Abraham and Isaac, he takes them up to the top of the hill, and then he obeys. Abraham obeys. He's like, I'm going to go through with this. And then at the last second, he's willing to go. He's willing. That is what Abraham needed, right?
Yes.
And so those were the lessons that he taught them. What is it in that prayer that you are learning that he wanted you to know about him?
That's a really great question. That truth, beauty, love, and meaning, they go deeper than the physical world. I think in a way it was an invitation. It was a conduit to tap into something deeper and more powerful than what our senses can pick up, what we experience as physical creatures, but to tap into a deeper truth that exists, that we have access to. And from there, you have the power to then better deal with the things of the world. It was almost like I had to experience the loss of what I valued in the world to gain an appreciation for something deeper than the world, something deeper, more spiritually based, and then use that to then come back and have a more meaningful experience with the material world to try to make things better.
What if you could walk and you didn't know that? How much difference would it be for you if you did learn to walk but didn't understand what you just said?
Because then I think that's a great question as well. I think what then happens is then you're kind of missing the mark. You're kind of missing the point of what that pain, it's almost like the pain opened a door to something deeper than something physical or external. It opened that door to something deeper rooted in eternity and the immaterial, something much deeper. It's not to say that God is immaterial, but just there's different dimensions. We have spiritual dimensions. We have a deeper essence to who we are rather than just a body. Yeah. And I think what the pain does is
that's so deep.
It opens the door to that dimension. And I think if I didn't walk through that door, and I admire anyone who does, it's tragic for those who don't, because then you're just a suffering body and you're not tapping into all the benefits and the fruits that can come from the pain and the opening of that door into something deeper and immaterial and spiritual.
Wow. So pain is important. I think, I mean, going back to that question that you said at the very, very beginning, like, it's the question of evil, right?
Yeah.
Why does he allow it? Why did he allow it to happen to you? What are the fruits of that for you?
I'm reminded of a quote that really hit me when I was in the middle of, as I alluded to before, my process of trying to figure all this out and make sense of it. That's when I really started to read things like from C.S. Lewis, The Problem of Pain, which is dealing with that very question. Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. But in The Problem of Pain, C.S. Lewis states that it is not that some humble, pious, believing suffer. That's not the problem. The problem is why some people do not suffer. Right? It's why it's the problem of pain is not that pious, humble, believing people suffer. The problem is when we don't, because the suffering, the pain once again, I think it taps us, it taps into something that is more to the essence of who we are, into our soul. And from there, from that place, in that place, that's when you can connect. It's not that we can't connect to God now with our bodies, but there's just a deeper dimension. And I think in that place, that's when you can connect to God. That's when you can connect to the divine. And so that's
that allowed you to do that.
Yeah, and that's how I started to make sense of it. That's how I started to become more accepting and, for lack of a better term, okay with what I was going through, because it's allowing me to connect into something deeper than just I'm a body and I have pleasure and pain sensors and, I'm just kind of a walking meat bag on this earth. It's like, no, we have something deeper in us. So the problem is not that some humble, that's what it is. The problem is not that some humble, pious, believing suffer, but that some do not. That's the problem.
Why don't they?
That's what's, I don't know, different choices, but I think what C.S. Lewis is getting at is what we do in the face of pain and the benefits it has for us. Pain is not the problem. It's what we do or don't do with that pain. That becomes the problem. And so many people that I see day in, day out, and not only personally, but professionally, at the root of what they're going through and the consistent and chronic issues that they're facing, it does stem back to an avoidance of pain. That's the real problem. It's the avoidance of pain.
Whoa, so people are they're trying to bury it and they try to avoid it. So they push it away. And then that's what you mean by that they don't really experience the pain. And so then they don't then learn the lesson. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Yeah. That's why Christ says to, he commands us to pick up our cross and follow him. It's like, wait, you want me to suffer? It's like, yep.
He's like, I did.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
But it's only because, through his suffering, he transcends, right? Pick up your cross, walk up the hill. And it's literally in the posture of Christ's body on the cross. He's open to the world. He's open to the pain. And even on the cross, he's receiving more and more pain. Yet Christ transcends the world.
Well, I think that's what enabled him to do it is what's interesting to me. Because it's like when he says, as he was, this is in Luke 22. So he goes to the garden, and when he was at the place, he said unto them, pray that ye enter not into temptation. Mm-hmm. He was withdrawn from them, saying, Father, if thou be willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. And so it's like, what is his will? I almost feel like most of the depths of the pain come from when we're this way. Because it's like, what is it that I wonder if that's a lot of it. Like, and I never thought of that till you just said that.
No, that's really good.
It's like when he thought of us, that's what allowed him to endure it. When you thought of what you could now do with your life, because we need you here on the world needs you, not just you. And I feel like that's what it sounds like. He didn't say this directly, but it's almost like that's what I feel like carries a lot of us out of these moments, Well,
and that's what gives
the outward perspective.
Yes, I believe that you can be in pain and have peace. I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive.
So it's possible. It's like we almost make the assumption like, God, even if there is pain, you can take it from me. But sometimes we can still remain in the pain. The pain's still there. The challenge is still there. The questions might still be there.
Yes.
The uncertainty might still be there. But we can still have peace.
We can still have, while our bodies and our minds can be in pain, I do believe our souls can be at peace if we're aligned with the will of the Father, just as Christ aligned his will with the Father.
While he was in some of the most excruciating pain.
Exactly. That's such a great point that you made, is that what helped him to, that's the perspective shift. I'm going to stop thinking about how it's affecting me and the pain coming this way. And I'm going to start thinking about something outside of me. And that's what allows us to then transcend it. And so that's why in Christ we have, what was it, John 14:27, right? Peace I leave with you.
Yeah.
My peace I give unto you. Not as the world giveth, give I unto you.
Not as the world giveth.
Right? Not as the world giveth. Let your heart not be troubled, neither let it be afraid. The world gives us peace.
Comfort.
Distraction, pleasures.
Avoiding the pain.
ways, all ways to avoid the pain. But Christ set the example of, no, actually, if you stare into the abyss, if you stare into the dark, and you just submit to it and let the pain happen while maintaining a higher vision towards a purpose in the ultimate being, which is God, then you will have peace, right? It's a deeper peace, is not dependent on a painless life. You can have peace even if you're in pain.
No, it makes me, because Adam and Eve, I feel like this is the question, when it comes to the question of evil, I feel like the question of evil or the question of pain, because you had your experience, this is what happened to you. You were a missionary, you were on your mission, and it was just circumstantial. Mm-hmm. You are a therapist, you meet with people who have things that have happened to them. Mm-hmm. You know, what is something that you would want anyone listening that you've learned, that you've gained? Because I think some people that have had these experiences that have happened to them,
yes,
that they didn't have any control over. What do you say to them to help them process that pain?
The first thought that came to my mind is my heart breaks for them. You know, I've been a therapist for a while now. I've been in the mental health field for almost 20 years now. And a lot of things don't bother me. I kind of joke with my clients or some of my friends. It's like, I've heard a lot. There's really nothing that could be said to me that shocks me anymore. My soul is a little dead and black inside. So it's fine. But you kind of need that. But you need that callousing. You need that little scar tissue, so to speak, to kind of be able to be with those people in the dark. However, the thing that still hits me is when, you know, someone's talking about what they went through as a kid, things that were done to them when they were kids. And my heart breaks for them. And I give nothing but empathy. And there's a tricky point, though, in their treatment or in anyone's just life path that we all face, which is a crossroads, is that, yes, that happened to me, but now what? Now what do I do with it? So while we are not always at fault for what happened to us, I can't say that it was my fault that I fell off a cliff. Yeah, it just happened. And there's a lot of adults out there that things have happened to them when they were kids that are not their fault. But the brutal truth, but the redeeming truth, the healing truth, is that it is always their responsibility now of what you're going to do with what has happened to you and what has been given to you. You have that power. I do believe in free will. I believe that you have the ability to overcome and to transcend. Christ believes that, otherwise he wouldn't have modeled that for us.
Yeah.
Right? Now we have to rely on him. We can't necessarily do this alone. That's why we turn to him, and we turn to others around us, other angels in the flesh that help us. But I think that's the main thing, is that it's not always our fault, but it is always our responsibility. Mm-hmm. And that's a heavy mantle to carry.
It's not always our fault, but it's always our responsibility.
It is always our responsibility to deal with virtuously and to endure well what we have been given. And that is a tall order, but we don't have to do it alone. That's the beauty of the gospel. That's the beauty of people around us, of relationships. That's the beauty of helping and mourning with those that mourn, and comforting those that stand in need of comfort. We all have to help each other. There is no way we can get through this world alone. It is a brutal place, but it's beautiful, full of lessons, and just as much ugliness as there is in the world, there's that much beauty. And sometimes the beauty of relationships is found through the pain. Think about it. Like, you go through really difficult things and then a neighbor helps you. Like, that's a beautiful moment. Yeah. That wouldn't have happened if there wasn't pain involved. Right? So there's opposition in all things. There's opposites. There's all of these things are kind of working together. It's not to say that the scales can't be tipped harder towards the pain side of things, but then that much more responsibility for us to try to tip them back the other way, to help everyone out where we can.
So there's positive things that happen, even though we didn't choose them, even though they may have happened to us. The result of those things could actually be an increase in connection to others that we would have not received otherwise. But I'm still just thinking of the person who, why do you think that God would allow it to happen?
So that his love can be made manifest through them. right? Lord, who sinned? This blind kid's father, his parents, who sinned? No one sinned.
Well, I'm saying, what about when people do sin?
Oh, when people do sin.
When people do sin, and I agree 100% with what you just said. That was powerful.
Yeah.
What about when people do sin against you or someone that you love? Why would God let that happen?
I think.
And how do you deal with it?
Because God values our growth, our spiritual development and our growth just as much as any loving parent values the growth and the development of their child. That's love, right? So there's a great book, The Road Less Traveled, Scott Peck. He's a psychiatrist and author. He's since passed away. But in the book, he's trying to examine and try to understand what love is. He says it's really hard to kind of figure that out. So let's start by process of elimination. Let's look at what love is not. And for the first 2/3 of his book, he's going through what love is not, eliminating things. And it's kind of like it's like a tactic that like Plato did. It's like, what is justice? And they look at what justice is not. And then whatever's left over, maybe that's what justice is. And so Scott Peck took the same model with love. Let's eliminate what love is not. And then whatever's left over, maybe that's what love is. And what was left over is one of my favorite, if not the best definition of love I've heard, which is love is the will to extend oneself for the spiritual growth of oneself or for another. Not religious, not physical, not mental, but the spiritual growth, the essence of that person, to see them grow. I'm going to extend myself. I'm going to will, and I have the will to do so, to extend myself for my spiritual growth or for the spiritual growth and development of another person. And if God is who I think he is, I can't imagine a bigger stretch and demand of extending oneself than to let us do some of these things to one another, right? But he wants us to grow, even at the risk of intense, unimaginable pain and suffering that we can inflict on one another. He loves us that much to let these things happen because he values growth, because he loves us so much over not allowing anything like this to happen to us at all. And I understand there's an argument. Yeah, but is there a limit? It's like a fair question. Like, is there a limit to what like is okay and what's not okay? What God is allowing, what he's not allowing? I get it. And I think, I don't know the answer to that, but that's where faith comes in.
But I think the question too would be, what is at stake if he doesn't allow the ability to choose? What happens? What do we lack?
As compared to what,
Yeah, well, I'm saying if we don't have the ability to choose, which will then mean that we will make mistakes. There will be pain. What does it look like when there's no pain? What does it look like when there's no wrong choices? What does it look like when we don't even have a chance to choose at all?
Yeah. And think of how
proud. Is there growth?
Yeah. Think of how proud he must be. That's what I love. My first title or just vision or conceptualization of God that I have is always Father, one of a father. And think of how proud a father is when they see their children try to figure things out.
It's hard to do.
And we're trying to figure things out. We're trying to figure out morality. We're trying to figure out codes of ethics and laws, and we're trying to figure this stuff out. And he's proud of us for trying to do so. I really believe that. Going back to the plan, it's like in free agency, it's like, well, this is a messed up world, and how could God allow this? Why would this be the plan? It's like, well, as compared to what? What alternative plan better aligns and sets us up best to grow and to develop? What better plan shows us that he truly loves us than letting us do these things to one another, right? And instead of questioning the moral character of God, we may want to question our own moral character before we start pointing the lens at him, if that makes sense.
Well, this is the God who loveth the world so much that he gaveth.
Exactly.
Look, listen, we don't really understand.
Yeah. You guys are gonna muck things up pretty bad. So I'm gonna give you
my son.
My son, so that you can have a way back.
And how painful was that for him?
Exactly. So as much pain in the world as there is, what an incredible manifestation of love for him to give his only begotten son for us.
And that's why I think that...
How cruel God is. No. How merciful, how beautiful, it is that he would give us his son to do that, to overcome this. Yeah.
The son who comes, who suffers and bleeds and dies and gives up his life willingly. Yes. And I just sometimes we don't even think, like, our heavenly parents, how they are watching this take place, and he could have intervened, but if he did, it would have affected all of us, right? But I think that there's a lot of assurance that we can gain from the fact that he understands us. A God came from his throne in heaven, whatever a throne meant. But it actually, a throne isn't this like, hello, I'm the king. It's like, I am a king. I'm a father who takes care of my children, and it made me think of this verse in chapter 21 of Revelation. He's like, and God shall wipe away all the tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow, nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And then Adam and Eve, right? In Moses, Adam and Eve, when they're like, well, they chose to experience this experience. Mm-hmm. And then they declare this. So Adam says in verse 10, and the day Adam blessed God and was filled, and he began to prophesy concerning the families of the earth, saying, blessed be the name of God, for because of my transgression my eyes are opened, and in this life I shall have joy, and then again in the flesh shall I see God. And Eve, his wife, heard all these things and was glad, saying, were it not for our transgression, we never would have had seed, and never would have known good and evil, and the joy of our redemption and the eternal life which God giveth unto all the obedient. And so, like, they're like, thank you,
yes,
for this experience. Thank you. They're thankful because it brought so much joy.
Well, I think that kind of helps to answer the question you had before of not only what happens when things have happened to people, but what about sin, whether we committed or other sins have been committed against us. It's like without transgression, without these things that we choose to do that aren't always on God's path, even then there's an opportunity there to find God. It's like, he's going to let us wander off the path. Hopefully it might get dark enough that you might turn back. And then when you come back, you'll appreciate it.
But that's what he really, really wants.
Yeah.
So what would you say for you is the thing that you want people to truly understand about your story?
Ultimately, first, if I can do it, anyone can do it. There's nothing inherently unique or special about me that would allow me to overcome this, and yet you can't overcome what you're going through. Why would God create me any more special or unique than he would create you or anyone else? So whatever is in you, or whatever was in me that helped me to overcome this, it's in you. And what I believe that is access to the divine, the power of God. I think one of the things that also came to my mind, it's one of my favorite quotes from Carl Jung. He was an Swiss analytical psychologist and philosopher. And he said that no branches of the tree can reach heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. So if you imagine a tree and you have an equal set of roots and an equal set of branches going down and up at the same time, and you think about Christ, right? He went through hell, but because of that, then he transcended.
Wow.
Right? And so there is the potential there, and I don't know what that is for everyone. I don't know what any single person, or generally speaking, what anyone needs to learn from their pain or to grow, what exact lesson they need to learn. And it's not even that the pain's just going to magically go away when you learn that lesson. But just as I did, we all have the potential to pull meaning out of our pain, which makes it more bearable. You can tolerate it. And not only can you tolerate it, but you can learn from it. You can grow. You can have different perspectives of gratitude and appreciation. You can also take your pain and turn and help others. And so ultimately, our pain gives us a chance. It gives us an opportunity. It privileges us with that opening of that door to something deeper. It gives you access to another dimension of who you really are. And once you can access that spot of who you really are, spiritually, in that special, unique dimension of your true identity, man, then you transform and you transcend the pain of this world.
If you could go back to that day that you plummeted down that mountain and hit your back on that rock, what would you, to that version of yourself who just woken up paralyzed, what would you say now to that young man?
I would reassure him that although it may seem like all hell is combining against you, that the darkest depths of this world are opening up and are going to swallow you up, this will be for your good. You will prevail. Have faith that you will prevail. Always turn towards the Lord. Always turn towards your family. Always turn towards truth, beauty, and love in this world. And you can overcome this. You will overcome this. And that would be the same thing I would say to anyone in that similar position, is I would try to instill hope and faith that this actually will be the gateway for you to understand something about yourself that will be so precious to you that if this did not happen, it otherwise would not, you would otherwise would not have been able to understand this about yourself. And this pain, I promise you, I know it doesn't seem like truth right now, but this pain will become very sacred to you. It will become sweet to you.
What is something that you believe now about God that there would have been no other way that you would have learned it otherwise without that pain?
I think because of what I've been through, what I've learned about God and Christ is that there is no cave too deep. There is no hole too dark where they cannot find you, where their light cannot penetrate. I've witnessed the power of that light and beauty emanating from God and Christ in a way in my darkest moments that I would never have experienced otherwise. I might have in another way, but I just know that what I have been through, what I have experienced, as dark as that is, I have seen just how bright and beautiful God's love can be. And I don't know if I would have been able to understand the extent to which that is possible, his brightness and his love and his glory, without this happening to me.
I'm going to ask you something a little bit more personal, okay? You don't even have to ask it. Mm-hmm. You have to answer if you don't want. But if let's say you go back to that day, you're on that mountain, you have the injury with no severe, like you just had the experience, nothing. Just
kind of get up and walk away.
Get up and walk away. Would you do it?
That's a good one. I've actually thought about that a lot. It comes in a different form. Like if you had a button, you can go back and hit the button and have it not happen. Would you hit that button? I would say, and it took me years to be able to get to this point where I could honestly say, and I mean this with all sincerity, no. I would allow everything to happen the same.
Really?
The reason being is because, once again, that pain opened a door to another part of me that otherwise would have stayed shut. I have found out more about myself and the nature of God and the power of God through this pain than anything I could ever imagine. And I'm grateful for it. I'm deeply grateful for it. That's why my pain is sacred. In another aspect as well, I would not give it up because the pain that I went through, or the accident that I went through, put me on a path of certain timing of decisions. For example, like deciding to study psychology, and then the timing of all of that, and having to rehab while still going to school, and it all kind of culminated into me coming into the pathway and sharing a pathway with who is now my wife. And if I didn't go through this, I probably wouldn't have. I don't know. I might have gone into mental health and psychology, but I don't know. I probably would have just done business or something. And thus I wouldn't be at that point in my life where I was when I met my wife, and I wouldn't have the children I have now. And that's too big of a risk to give up because I love my life. I love my wife. I love my children. And I believe that if I could go back and change that, I would be risking my current life. And I don't want to do that. So the pain and what I've been through is worth what I have now.
And that is?
A beautiful life with a beautiful wife, beautiful kids, and a life full of meaning.
Listen, I've learned so much in this conversation. One of the biggest things that I've learned is in the darkest moments, the darkest areas of our life, we can choose. And the coolest thing that I've ever seen in my life, I love seeing you walk. I love it. I go to the gym. We live close by near each other. It is the coolest thing. I forget that you have a cane. I don't remember that because I don't think that you choose not to allow that to be the defining thing. And like there was even that one day that I tackled you. I was like, oh no, but we can choose the way that God did.
Yes.
He chose us. He chose to be with us. So thank you for coming. Thank you for having this experience with us. And I believe that everything that you said is true. I know that there is a God too. And for those of you who are out there, we believe this is true. We found out for ourselves. It's up to you to find out for yourself. This is Stephen Jones. This is Let's Get Real. Until next time.